Let's start with Friday. Jobs report last Friday. Big day last Friday, Frank. Jobs came in at 22,000-ish, well under the 75 expected. And then yesterday was the bigger news because that's what we were talking about and looking out points ahead. Revisions from the prior, I don't know why their language is like this, but they say, instead of saying March 2024 to 2025, they say the prior year leading up to March 2025, which is stupid. So they ought to change that. Frank, minus 911,000. 911,000. That's the biggest since like 1980, I've read somewhere. It's the biggest ever since they started keeping these tracks. It's pretty laughable. And the critics will point to, now, this is a softball slow pitch for Trump because everybody wanted this knee-jerk reaction that doesn't like the right, says, told you the economy sucks. But remember, this is for the year under Biden. Is, of course, taking to social media and blasting everything and how great he is, of course. But the issue is this revision was not only one of the biggest, it's laughable and remarkable, showing that all data should be questioned. It doesn't matter who's in charge. The data process in collection is absolutely horrible. That shows that. The second thing is, if the jobs market is clearly a lot weaker, we get back into this data-driven, Frank, the Fed meets next week. How does this not absolutely force the Fed to start cutting if you now have to worry about jobs?
I mean, the Fed has to cut more aggressively. And I'll get to that part in a minute because we say 911,000. I want to put that in perspective. That's from April 24 to March 2025. And to put this in perspective, I'm going to give you a couple of stats. You got to put this in perspective because 911,000, it's meaningless to people. That's over 50% of the actual 1.7 million jobs that were reported. Okay, so we just lost 50% on revisions. So that number now is 852,000 instead of 1.76 million. You mentioned the revision is the biggest in history, but it's higher than 2009 when in the middle of credit crisis. If you exclude healthcare, we lost 142,000 jobs just over the past 4 months. Okay, those are recessionary numbers. And the amount of these revisions, I think what we have to put in perspective, because when we compare, well, like we haven't seen this credit crisis or the dot-com bubble, those are black swan events. I mean, this revision isn't during the credit crisis, September 11 recessionary times. This is during a screaming bull market, meaning that they clearly highlight that the previous administration was lying. There's no doubt. I mean, the massive revisions, this isn't like a 1 month mistake or a 2 month mistake. This is like 7, 8 months, even going back to 2 years. I mean, this was calculated. This was done on purpose. I mean, I'm glad Trump fired the BLS chief, and people would say, well, it's because you had weak numbers or whatever. If you're reporting 8 months, if you can't, you're not doing your job. You're not doing your fucking job. If you're telling me 911,000 jobs revised, 50% of the jobs did not exist. Because what does that mean? Like, if you put that in perspective, people are like, oh, well, maybe it's a recession. Think about the impact. If these numbers were reported right, we would have rates at least 1% lower than they are right now. At least if they were reported truthfully. We would have the housing market very strong instead of stuck in this broken mode, higher rates, and yes, supply is increasing, but there's been lower supply, so prices have stayed up. People couldn't really buy houses. Our interest payments on our government debt would be much lower. Credit cards, auto loans would all be lower, but the hidden tax that's been put on Americans because of these bullshit numbers, you can't calculate it in terms of the payments that people are made because most people are in debt in America, or we live off of debt. If you look at every country, every single country, and I have a picture of this that I'll put up. Okay, so this is so many different countries. Okay, so right here, what do they all have in common? When you look at Switzerland, you look at Thailand, you look at Denmark, you look at the Eurozone, you look at Sweden, South Korea, Canada, Malaysia, China, New Zealand, Czech Republic, Australia, UK, Norway, US, Peru, Hong Kong, Chile, Saudi Arabia, Poland, Philippines, Indonesia, India, South Africa, Mexico, Colombia, Russia. Those are just the biggest nations. What do they all have in common? They all have been lowering rates this year. And you know what we have done? We haven't lowered rates this year. Okay, we're one of the only countries. Because why? Because the job market told us not to. That's why. Okay, we have inflation numbers that were lower, that were clear. They crashed. Our inflation crashed. It was crashing month to month until about 2 months ago. Right now we're seeing, we just got the PPI numbers showing that inflation was lower. If we get the CPI tomorrow, which is also lower, it has to be a 50 basis cut. It has to base on these revisions. But this is what Powell has been saying all along, where the job market's strong. The job market's not been strong. We've lost 142,000 jobs minus healthcare the past 4 months. Okay, it's not strong. You need to lower rates now. You need to lower rates aggressively. Even some of the best economists, the smartest economists who were against this are saying, okay, we have to lower rates. And it does open up the door to that 50 basis point cut at the next Fed meeting, which happens to take place next week.
Last year, when you go from 2023 to 2024, March to March, the revisions came out at 800,000 plus. That was then revised lower to only 500,000 and change. This 911,000 number will get revised, hopefully lower. But the point is, this is still going to be such an outlier off the charts. And Frank, to your point, I, for one, love being political because political is everywhere and everything, and to ignore it is just being silly and putting the odds against you. This is clearly showing, A, you don't just trust data. You should be skeptical. There's nothing wrong with questioning and being skeptical and the process of collecting it. And clear, two, the Fed has never been independent. We've educated you and explained that here. Only the other goofy people lying to you tell you that story. And also, they are political. Think climate change and all that crap the Fed got involved in. Frank, you say it's 50 basis points. We shall see next week.
So numbers right now don't make sense. Those revisions are so big, and those consequences, hidden consequences, are so massive. It's just, this is proof that we really need this system to be improved. We really need our numbers to be better, because right now, I mean, I think China numbers are more accurate than our numbers. That's how terrible that is.